time for another episode of Made of Metal. I'm Tony Davis. Right beside me, all the way in Wisconsin, is one Jack Sullivan, and it's time to get into the nitty gritty on fitness. Jack, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm ready for bed, to be honest. It's a little early for that, but I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Like I was telling you before we went live, I was hibernating a little bit wrestling wise. I
Sure.
didn't really have a whole lot of wrestling this year so far, whereas a lot of other people I know and train with have been already stacking up matches, which great for them. And that's about to change for me as of this weekend. The next 5 weekends, I'm out of town, so I don't see uh, Albuquerque again on the weekends until like April. I don't know, 6th, maybe.
And then by then your schedule will also be packed in further out, I'm sure.
Yeah, by then the weeks after that will be, yeah, I'm already starting to get full for like May and June too. So that's already starting to pack up. So, yeah,
Exciting though. It's a good thing to have going.
it's a great problem to have. So, yeah.
Are you and Tommy traveling together at all?
For we're going to Texas, for Phoenix, for Denver and Cheyenne. So yeah, actually, yeah, I think we're going everything except my Orlando weekend.
Nice.
Is going to be me and Tommy at least, and then maybe a couple other people.
Was Orlando where you went to wrestling school?
Yeah. In like 2017, 2016, somewhere around there. I was in Orlando for a year for wrestling school. So I'm not going there for that school. I'm going for other stuff, for business related stuff. So actually not wrestling,
Nice.
but business coaching related. So it's still going to be a busy weekend.
Cool. Cool. Cool.
And
Cool.
the really cool thing is, I just got an email today actually. So Formula One, they've been doing stuff in Vegas the past couple years, right? One of the things that they're doing is they're building and opening this huge Grand Prix Plaza type exhibit where they have like, I don't know what it is, but it looks like there's going to be like a Formula One display, like history mini museum type of thing. They got a go-kart track. They got like all kinds of stuff. They got racing simulators. I just got the email today that it's opening at the end of March. So
You're going.
when I fly back, because when I'm flying out, I'm flying to Vegas to have a layover and then going to Orlando. And I don't remember if I'm flying the same way back, but if I do, it'll be right after it opens. But since I'm going to be in Vegas in the middle of April for wrestling stuff, I will at the very least have an opportunity to go then. So, yeah, I'm going to be spending tons of time and money doing Formula One go-kart related type stuff. So, yeah, that'll be cool.
Sounds great. You want to get those carts when they're fresh too, you know?
Oh, yeah. Before they have a whole lot of miles on them, before I don't know if they're gas or electric or whatever. So you want to get, yeah, you want to get the carts when they're new before they have for their before somebody like me comes along and throws them into walls,
Or throws other people in walls.
throws other people into walls and all kinds of stuff before I Max Verstappen people.
Hmm.
I'm highly tempted to take my Red Bull tights and wear them when I race.
No shirt though.
No shirt though. That could be good wrestling content. That'd be hilarious.
I think you should. I bet you won't.
Oh, really now? Bet,
Hmm. Hmm.
bet.
All right, I'm waiting. Ready.
All right. Well, I'll be out there mid April. Fifth, like the 17th is when our show is out there. So
Shake on it. It's happening.
a virtual shake on it.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Cool, cool. All right. What's our topic today?
So our topic today came from a conversation I had at the last Albuquerque wrestling show. One of my friends pulled me aside and he wanted to ask me about rep ranges. So he asked me which was better, if it was 4 sets of 10 or 3 sets of 15. And so I pulled him, we pulled aside and I was like, it's actually neither. This is actually what you want to do instead. And I basically broke down what we're going to go over the course of the next hour and change in terms of rep ranges. And I kind of broke down why. I basically told him both of his options were not the way to go, and I told him kind of why my way is the way to go. I haven't followed up with him to see if he's tried it yet. Maybe I should do that when we're done. But what we're talking about today is rep ranges. Everybody wants to know when you're first starting out with weights. I want to know, if is it reps of 8? Is it reps of 6? Is it reps of 12? For some reason, sevens always get left off. Like seven is this weird, like no gain fly zone sort of thing where if you do 7 reps, you get nothing out of the set, which is weird. Um,
It's neutral ground.
it's neutral ground. It does nothing, nothing, no size, no strength, no endurance, nothing.
Yeah.
But I thought it'd be a great topic because this is also going to be useful information for people that have been in the gym as much as useful as it is for people that are just getting in the gym. Because if you have been in the gym and you've been trying a bunch of things and you're just stuck and you don't feel like anything is happening, nothing's changing, you're trying to get muscle and it's just not going your way, this is something for you to consider. And we're going to be talking about this is what I consider, and this is what I've been researching feverishly the past few months, several months at this point. So this is what I consider to be the best rep range, and we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about why this is the best rep range, and we'll talk about some of the issues with some of the other rep ranges.
I like it. I like it. So one of the things too is just to clear it up is like the term hypertrophy just basically means like muscle growth. Um, because that's a word we're going to be throwing around quite a bit. So it's just we're going to get into the science behind what reps work for hypertrophy. We want to be specific of what the specific of what specific goals are, what someone's goals are, and the majority of this call is going to be on gaining muscle size and strength. We
Yeah, if you're trying to figure out how to get better at sprinting or marathon running or tactical games like Jack, this is not the episode for you. Like this is not gonna have any pertinent information for you. Go find somebody else that's talking about tactical games training and do what they say because it's probably going to be very different than what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and I
I'm
think
sure.
this lines up with what most Gen Pop wants, though, right? The whole goal is to build muscle, get a little bit bigger, get a little bit stronger. Like that's the target. We
Yeah,
want them
yeah,
to
it's
be
weird
how
because
efficient you can do.
there's I've boiled Gen Pop down into two types of people, and this is part of my mission, is the second type. The first type of person is the person that knows that they just want to build muscle for whatever reason, aesthetics, whatever. Usually it starts with something aesthetic and then it goes on from there. The other type of people are the people that don't know that they should build muscle, but they have some other goal in mind, right? They want to feel better, which you can do that if you build muscle. They want to tone up, which part of that is building muscle. They want to get rid of chronic pain, that's building muscle. They want to feel like they're maybe 5, 10 years younger, that's building muscle. They want to have better moods, that's building muscle. They want to not get sick as often, that's building muscle. So, like, there's a trend that I know Jack is picking up on because he's smiling, and I hope anybody watching is also picking up on that trend. And so, my part of my mission is to illustrate to people why building muscle goes beyond just looking jacked and looking yoked and looking great when you're naked.
Building muscle makes everything better.
Building muscle makes
More muscle, the
everything better.
better your life will be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, and I guess one other thing before we get into it too is uh more of like a blanket statement is like as far as nutrition goes, if someone's new to resistance training, it's a novel stimulus, meaning it's new to them. So they're going to have a better response with less optimal training because it's new. That doesn't last for forever. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, is like once you get to the point that you've been lifting or resistance training, however you have been for several years, there will become a point that you have to make sure that you are getting enough of the right kinds of nutrition in order to advance. And a lot of the times that's going to be mostly around maintenance, a small surplus if you want. And then we're also seeing is like in a small deficit, it's not possible to build muscle, but it does become a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. And this is a problem that I see a lot as well, especially with beginners, but I still see it a lot even in intermediate lifters, not so much with advanced lifters because they've already figured this part out, which is they'll start a new program and they'll hit those newbie gains, right? Which is basically it's all of the type 1 fibers that are getting used to it. It's the neural adaptations, it's all that part of strength building and getting used to a routine. And then those slow down, and so people go, okay, this program doesn't work anymore, and they switch. The issue is when you slow down is when the neural adaptations are basically over or almost over. which means that all that's left is the actual muscle growth. The issue is when you then switch, you're now starting back at square one, going back to the neural adaptation phase. So all you're doing with these, 4-week programs or 6-week programs, or even 4-week phases of a larger program is you're just focusing on these neural adaptations over the course of like 2, 3, 4 weeks. And then you're changing just to keep things feeling fresh without actually tapping into and getting solid muscle growth response because it isn't going as fast as possible. Which, if you go back to, I have to upload that episode because I didn't. But if you go back to our previous episode that the internet hated about progressive overload, we talk about what actually happens when you get really down in the trenches, which is that it becomes very slow, and that's the way it's supposed to be. That's when you know things are still working really well, and that's when you know it's less neural adaptations and more muscular, is when you do have that slow progress.
And one of the things that you mentioned too is just like if your program is jumping too often, um, that's when you run into this issue that you're not able to adapt and overcome in a sense, right? But what's important is like making sure in those training blocks, phases, whatever you want to call them, whether they're 4, 6, 12 weeks long, you don't necessarily want to completely swap out you like certain exercises. You want to maintain them, but it's also just changing what's your intent. Maybe like you tweak the sets, maybe you tweak the reps, maybe you tweak the intensity, but you're keeping the same exercise so you can continue using that exercise that your body's adapting to and learning to build with over time. But if you're going from, one extreme to another, going from, say barbells to dumbbells for, let's just say, a Romanian deadlift, you can only hold such big of dumbbells effectively. So then it limits you. Where a barbell, you can load potentially 1,000+ pounds if you wanted to, right? That's an extreme,
Yeah.
but it's the idea of the implement matters. If you're using a machine for something and you're isolating it matters. So you need to be able to progress on whatever you're doing. But if you're changing drastically and then all of a sudden limiting yourself, like no wonder you stop making progress strength wise or you stop making muscle gain progress over time.
Yeah. And even if even just making a switch to play off your example and going from like a barbell to a dumbbell, there's still a little bit of a learning curve going between those two. Even though it's the same movement, you're now moving from one weight essentially to two weights. So you're learning how to balance those two together. So
Mhm.
there's even time spent, even if you're solid with the Romanian deadlift, there's still a little bit of time spent bridging that small gap between the two different forms of the exercise.
Mhm.
And
Now, right, if your phase was concentrating on something and you did it for 12 weeks and then then it shifted to something slightly different, like fine, but like still we know that we can run the same effective programming over and over, and as long as weight is increasing over time, you're progressing. So a lot of the times people make these changes just to quench people's, their thirst for change when ultimately it's like we don't actually need nearly as much as you think, but people want and then wonder why they're not getting what they actually want, right? I know that's something
yeah,
that we talk about. Is people say they want this, but they do something else.
yeah. And really, part of the reason that people get stuck in these programs is a lot of what we'll talk about today with these rep ranges, because we're going to talk about fatigue management as one of our points. And that is part of the reason some people run into issues with maybe not so well thought out programming, I'll say, to try to be nice, because I'm probably going to hit a point where that runs out tonight. I can already tell
Yeah,
just as I was putting everything together.
start now. Just speak it how it needs to be spoken now.
Fine. When you're on a
Uh,
program that's
but
shit, problems come through a lot easier. So when the program's terrible, you run into plateaus a lot easier because you get things thrown at you like doing 6 sets of something or doing 15 reps per set at 6 sets, and it's 30-second rest periods, and it's 6 days a week, and it's all this stuff. It's 2-hour workouts, and these are all things that are gonna make your life harder, not easier. And contrary to popular belief, Your workouts don't have to kill you to be effective.
What? No. And the other thing too is right with my background with like group fitness, same kind of thing. It's just like how much variety, how much alteration and intensity and randomness can we do? We'll get into that.
Yeah,
First, let's get into Heinemann's size principle.
this is my jam. Yeah. Uh,
Okay.
this is one of the two big principles we're going to talk about today. Hennemann's size principle is this is essentially a uh, a principle that was discovered decades ago that explains how muscle fibers are recruited in any type of movement. So this is whether or not it's a low intensity movement like picking up a bag of groceries, all the way to like single rep attempts on a powerlifting platform. This is how muscle fibers are recruited for every single contraction, every single movement that a muscle is being asked to do from the day you're born to the day that you die. Let me see if I can successfully do what I did before and reshare that screen.
I believe in you.
I believe in me too. Let's see if maybe it'll actually work a little faster this time. That would be cool too. I think
There
we
we
got
go.
some good progress. So, Henneman size principle. This is basically the principle laid out visually. And think of your entire muscle as broken up into a group of various different sizes of muscle fibers, and each group of fibers gets activated at different points. So, if you take a low intensity activity, let's stick on the legs because this will help paint the picture pretty well. So if you stick with a low intensity activity like walking, walking typically doesn't use a whole lot of intensity, so it uses the smaller motor units. And you can basically say that those are the ones that are filled in red here. Those are those first three on the left. As demand increases, those larger and larger motor units get recruited. So those can happen when you are strength training. If you are squatting or if you're doing leg press or leg extensions, you can tap into those larger shown here as unfilled white circles, but those only get activated by demand. So there's no way to really shortcut the process and go and activate just this one motor unit all the way on the right, which is typically the ones that we're trying to get to because those are the ones that are most responsive to growth. So when we're trying to build muscle, we are trying to get as many muscle fibers as possible, and we definitely want to get the largest motor units as possible as well because those are the ones that will grow if we provide the adequate stimulus and the adequate materials, aka protein. So, Henneman's size principle is just a fancy way of saying muscle motor units get recruited in order from smallest to largest. The only way that we can get to the largest ones is by going very high intensity, and that basically boils down to how we then develop a theory for how many reps or how intense a workout needs to be in order to target those larger muscle fibers.
Yes. Another way, we were just talking about this before, is like another way to kind of another example is our bodies like to be efficient. And as you say you're working up in weight, right? It's not uncommon to, it's actually recommended in most cases, right? Do a one or two warm-up sets before you get into your working weight. But when you start getting to heavier weight, like the first rep or two sometimes feels heavier. And sometimes people like doubt their ability or doubt their strength prematurely because we're still using those low threshold motor units until you ask more of them. And then it's kind of like recruiting the troops. It's recruiting the higher threshold motor units. And when those kick on, that weight that felt heavy for like the first rep, all of a sudden doesn't feel so heavy. Not that it's not difficult, but it doesn't feel as heavy. It's moving easier because it's kind of recruited a bigger army of muscles to move the thing. So that's one of those things. It's like, I think that's a limiting factor for people because they go, oh, that's tough. And if, you know, anyone that's maybe had a trainer or Tony and I have been in that situation with clients, is you see them move and the speed that they move at looks good, their form looks good. And from rep to rep, we're not seeing any change. And our goal is to see change in the speed. And that tells us that we're using a weight that's challenging. So a lot of people stop themselves early. And this is when, in our case, would be, it's the classic, oh, my trainer handed me a heavier weight. Well, it's like, yeah, because you're not
because you can
asking.
handle it.
Right. You didn't get to that tipping point, and then all of a sudden someone's like busting out reps at a heavy weight, and you're like, well, we actually have room to go up even more. So there's something to be said for like experience and confidence. Um, but that's another example, like he was just showing, is like with the three smaller ones, in order to get to those higher threshold motor units, the demand has to be there because our bodies like to be efficient. So you have to get uncomfortable. And I think that's a point that a lot of people stop themselves at and then they stay there. And this is when people stay at the same or similar weight for long periods of time and then go, oh, I work out all the time, but I'm not making any progress. You're not asking your body to adapt to anything.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times people will stop right when the weight starts to slow down because it starts to feel harder. And it's like, that's like you were heading into the promised land and then you stopped right at the gates. And you always stop right at the gates. And so when you try to figure out why you're stuck, it's because you never walk into the city of Henneman size principle of Hennemanville. You never walk in. They
I
have the
love
door open, but you won't walk in.
it. Hopefully that helps. Something too, again, another visual example. I can't remember if I shared a video recently. May have only been on my story, but it's like you look at some of your recent posts and you look at how the first couple reps of something, they're not moving fast, but the last couple reps are definitely moving slower. Or, like I just did with Tony today, I had deadlifts and I shared a 475 deadlift. And the first half was like at a decent speed. And then the last quarter was like, it's moving, right? It's moving. Oh, I got it. Like,
Yeah.
it's that's what we need. You have to have a really high demand, and we expect to see the reps slow down. You're gonna make a weird face, you're gonna make weird noises, like that's the point that you need to get to.
Yeah. If you're not lifting hard enough that you have to make funny faces, you're not lifting hard enough for muscle growth. Like generally speaking, that's pretty much a solid rule of thumb. So
Mhm.
keep that in mind.
Did
Um,
that sound come out of me? Did I make that face? Yeah. Um, okay, so real quick, the low threshold motor units are recruited first. Those tend to be endurance fibers, right? We think
mhm.
of
They don't tire very easily. They're very oxidative basically. They run on oxygen. So as long as you're breathing, they can go on forever.
We want to go to glycolytic though, and those are the
Mhm.
ones that run on glucose, carbohydrates.
Run on glucose, they run on creatine basically,
Mhm.
and they don't have a lot of staying power, but those are the ones that are responsible for that are
Excellent.
most respondent to growth. And so they grow and they can then hold more creatine and hold more glucose, and that's how that cycle basically just continues to scale up.
And then playing off of what you said before with having more muscle keeps you healthier, right? Our blood sugar goes up and down. This is normal if you don't have diabetes, right? Insulin regulates blood sugar, but also the more muscle you have, the more storage units you have for glucose, the more easily your body can store and use things for later and keep your blood sugar level.
Yeah.
So, or more level, I should say, right? Normal fluctuations. That's fine. It's when they go high and stay high because there's nowhere for that glucose to go, or you're not active enough to give that glucose a job. So building more muscle allows, it's like a storage unit for those things. And then when you exercise, it gets used appropriately.
Mhm. Yeah, it allows you to store it in the muscle. That way the glucose has somewhere to go instead of just going to body fat, which is where it would go otherwise. Once the muscle is capped off and once the liver is capped off, the next stop for any extra energy is body fat.
It's a different type of storage.
Yeah. And really the whole point of bringing up the size principle is because it's kind of rep range independent. So everybody, the standard thought is 6 to 12 or 8 to 12 is best for hypertrophy, and it's really not the case. That's more a social norm more than an actual accurate figure. It's just like that's just what people did. And so that's what people still do because that's just what has been done for decades. Um, really, if you really play the principle, if you play the size principle and you play the theory that we're going to talk about next, you really see that the actual range for hypertrophy is a little bit lower than that. It kind of overlaps, but it doesn't have to be as high as 12. Definitely doesn't have to be 15, 20, 30, 50, or 100, anything like that. But what we look at when we go into what's there's I think there's a couple of different names for it, but the name that I have written down is the stimulating reps theory. And essentially it plays off of the idea that there are certain reps that are more important than other reps when it comes to building muscle. And the idea is typically it's about, depending on the exercise, depending on the muscle, it's roughly the last 5 reps of a set that are most responsible for sending the body a signal to build muscle, provided that those muscle. So really, it should be the last 5 to failure. So Jack and I talk in terms of RIR and RPE a lot. So if you think about it, it's like RPE 5 and higher, RIR 5 or lower, all the way down to 0. As long as you're in that range, you're hitting those stimulating reps. But generally speaking, the on average, most stimulating reps we can get in a given set is 5, roughly. Now it's depending on the exercise, depending on the muscle. It could be 4, it could be 6. So obviously the average is right in the middle at 5. And so when we know that our target rep range for those stimulating reps is 5, we can then think about the fact that, well, if we know that it's 5, what are we doing a set of 15 for? What are the first 10 reps for? They're not really doing a whole lot. They're just kind of giving you extra time to just go through the motion, and they can really just give you extra fatigue, which is great if you want to spend a few extra days recovering from your workout. They can help they can help your joint pain last a little bit longer if you just want to throw on a bunch of extra reps and not actually build the tendon strength, which only happens under heavy weight. So there's that too. Um, but when we sit and we consider the stimulating reps theory, we really kind of want to hover in that sort of 4 to 8 rep range. 8 because it gives you a little bit of leeway, right? It gives you a little bit of leeway where you have those 3 extra reps to play with, those extra 2 to 3 reps where you're still kind of getting in the groove. And if you are in that super common place that Jack illustrated, where those first couple reps, you're still kind of waking up those larger muscle fibers. So the rep's going to be a little slower before you really get in the movement. You kind of have some time to get through that. And then you get to your 5 meaty reps after that. And the main point, the overall thing that we're looking for within these stimulating reps is we're looking for what's termed as mechanical tension. And the key here, there's this long definition I found somewhere, but I kind of boil it down. And it's basically a combination of 2 things. It's a high degree of force, which means you're trying with everything you have to move the weight, right? So that's how you get those larger muscle fibers, those larger motor units tapped. And then it's an involuntary reduction of rep speed. And that's the key part. So this is what Jack was talking about with the reps getting slower at the end. But the key is it has to be involuntary reduction of rep speed. So a lot of people will try to just go with slow concentrics, slow, right? Slow, just slow bicep curls to try to get to this second half of the point. To kind of try to get around the point that you have to go really intense to, and it really never pans out. It never works. Because if it's voluntary, you're not tapping into those larger muscle motor units because you just don't have to, because you're not using a weight that forces you to give everything that you got. So it has to be high force coupled with low speed, because low speed is really what triggers the reactions in the body that signal muscle growth.
One of the things too is like when you're in that higher rep range and yeah, your last couple reps are the quote unquote ones that count. What we're talking about it's like when we're getting to fatigue is okay, yeah, we spent the first what 8, 10 reps of 12 or 15 just kind of getting tired. And the other thing too is like you have to realize those last couple of reps, the force production is not the same as it would have been had it only been a total of 4 to 8 reps as your goal, rather than 12 to 15. So you're right, you're burning the wick at both ends rather than being more efficient. So you can really put it down in shorter reps without fatiguing yourself, which means if you have a few more sets after that, you're going to have more fuel in the tank to again put down a higher force. Um, and one of the things to remember or know too is like muscles only know tension. So that pokes a lot of holes in people's belief about rep ranges and sets and exercise variety and all that kind of stuff. Like muscles legitimately only know tension, and then it's putting them under a high enough demand to get the reaction that we're talking about. Um, so
Yeah,
the,
you don't need to do you don't have to do, squats or Bulgarian split squats on a Bosu ball or anything like this for balance or coordination or for extra quad growth. It's like, no. If all you want to do is hit the quads, do a leg extension. Like, I don't like, do you want to grow the quads or are you trying to do something else? Because if you're trying to just get good at doing Bulgarian splits on a Bosu ball,
do it.
then go do it. But if
Yeah.
you're here to try to build muscle in your legs because you want stronger knees, you want stronger hips, you want to get rid of back pain, just go do some leg extensions. Do sets of 4 to 8.
It's a good toss in. You want to get rid of
Like,
pain more Bulgarian split squats.
I hate Bulgarian split squats. And everybody hates Bulgarian split squats too. So I don't understand why they're so common, because they're
Hard.
hated they're hated by clients, they're hated by trainers. It's like, it's the trope, right? Of like, you wake up and you see new programming and you see Bulgarian split squats and you hate your trainer. I'm like, why is everybody doing this exercise that we all outwardly hate? It's not even a hidden fear. We all hate this exercise, but it's everywhere.
It's a good mental challenge.
It's Yeah, you know what else is also a good mental challenge? Making sure you get to a 1 RIR,
Hey.
because that also takes a lot of work.
Mhm. And that's
And guess what you can do more effectively when you don't have to worry about balancing on a bench or balancing on a Bosu ball? You can take that extra mental space in your plate and focus it more on getting to your 1 RIR, which means you can then focus on actually building muscle. You know what else happens when you don't have to do sets of 12, 15, 20, where you have to figure out on pushing through the burn and breathing heavy, all that takes mental space away from actually work that's going to build muscle. You can then build muscle. You can then build properly to your 1 RIR, to your 2 RIR. You can even go to your 0 if you're playing with that week.
well, you know what I find too, like again, this is from working in group fitness, is like people after getting used to doing really high rep stuff, chasing the burn, is that they actually feared or they were like so uncomfortable and so unfamiliar with pushing their actual limits when it
I don't know
came
any
to
other way.
lesser reps. They'd be like, "Oh, it's a heavy day." And you see people grab like 5 or 10 pounds more, but like you use that weight to do like 30 reps before and you think 5 or 10 pounds more is enough for like a 5 by 5?
Yeah.
I'm like, you need
Yeah.
to quadruple your weight, if not more. But it's so foreign and it's so infrequent that they run into that. So it's like they're not getting shit for an adaptation. They're like, yeah, I did a strength. It's like, no, that didn't like great. If you did that now, how many times per week for 6 months? Let's talk
Yeah.
then. But make sure that you're also going heavier, which they probably aren't because they're not comfortable with it. So it's an interesting thing because you have to, like I was saying, with the deadlift or referring to the videos that you've taken recently that are on your Instagram, it's like you have to get to that involuntary slowdown. I think so many people crap out early. And I get like what we're getting at here with this with the low rep versus the high rep and being effective is it's not about the number of reps in the set necessarily, but it's about how many effective reps you legitimately accumulate. So you
Yeah.
don't need a 30-minute class to do this. You don't need, 12 different exercises.
You could do
What,
this
one
in
to three sets?
you can do this 2 sets per exercise, 6 sets per workout, and you nail your entire body.
But it's making sure you get to that involuntary slowdown, like you are pushing that
Yeah.
fucking hard.
The thing about it is, there's a bunch of things about this. One, you're not going to feel the burn, because if you're doing sets of like 6 or 7, you're not doing enough reps to really generate that much lactate from glycogen metabolism. So there's typically not going to be a whole lot of burn. So people will think that it's not effective because as a society, we're trained to look for the burn. We're trained to look for the heavy breathing to tell us that the workout's effective. When we really know that neither of those really tell you specifically that a workout's effective or not. So there's that. Another pitfall is when you only have 2 sets of an exercise, you only have 2 opportunities to really get it right. really, if you're on your shit, if you're on your game, you can do it in one set. But you really have to know your shit, and you really have to know how you're pushing. If you are doing a more traditional workout where you're doing 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sets, I mean, yeah, you throw enough spaghetti at the wall, some of it's gonna stick. But if you only have two noodles, they better be pretty sticky noodles
Or really big ones.
or really big ones.
Lasagna noodles that are like
They better be lasagna noodles. It's
um
exactly that. And so there's that. People will tell me that they miss the pump, and I always come back with, well, then you're not pushing hard enough going low volume. Because I don't know about you, Jack, but when I push to a true like one RIR, it doesn't matter the rep range. I'm coming out with a pump. It doesn't matter if it's a set of 4, 6. Like I don't do anything over 8 right now unless it's an acclimation week at the beginning of a meso. That's it.
sure. Yeah,
But
find you're zeroing, right? You're zeroing in on
yeah,
what's
I'm
useful for the next time.
I'm zeroing on form, on how to set the machine. I'm practicing tempo. So like those are the focal points. It's not necessarily building muscle, but even still, that's still like a 2 RIR.
Right.
So I'm still knocking on that door. But like even on the heavy weeks where it's yeah, set of 5, set
Yep.
of 6, I'll do 2 sets and I'm coming out with a pump. It takes longer to kick in, but it really doesn't. It's just that I only do 2 sets, so it just takes a while. It always takes a while. But when you're doing 4 sets of something or 5 sets, you don't notice it taking a while because it's kicking in while you're still working.
Right. Yeah, as, like you said, it's like a couple what, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, it was working up to like 3 to 5 reps on weighted pull-ups and dips.
Yeah.
And the chest and tricep pump from what did I do? 4 dips at like a hundred with
At
130.
135.
Yeah, yeah, right on top of my 220 something.
Yeah.
I never think about my own body weight with dips. I'm like, yeah, it's just 135 pounds. It's like, oh, no, 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 135 plus like 225.
Yeah.
Uh, that's a lot. But still, but it's like you like the pump and you're like, oh, my shirt's getting uncomfortably tight, you know? Like
Yeah. And I don't know about you because I haven't asked a whole lot of people yet about this, but those pumps last longer.
I'd have to think like I see no reason why not.
They're
I've just
not they're not they're not as pronounced. So there is that. Like if you do like tons of sets of like 15 or 20, like you get a nasty, nasty pump. You do a set of like 4, 6, you still get a pump. It's maybe about like 50, 60%. But to me, it feels like it lasts a lot longer. Like I've noticed it still being there like hours later.
I'd have to think about it. Again, my training has not been
You're not focusing on that right now.
no, no, not much. Another
Yeah.
thing too, like as far as like making sure that your intensity is appropriately placed is like some, I don't want to say all the time, but a fair amount of the time, if you're following a percentage-based program, it's ensuring that based on like your 4 or 5 rep max or your 1 rep max, that your sets and reps align with making sure that like it's hard. Like you're at that point. That is the goal of it.
Yeah.
Um, Otherwise, it's like you're making your best guess. And like, yes, a general recommendation is that you should be going up each time you have, okay, so say you have workout A, B, and C throughout the week, 3 workouts. So you have workout A 1 time per week. So the goal is next week you should be increasing weight. We talked about this last week too, but like increasing weight, improving form, right? There's, better tempo, whatever it is, but you have to be progressing. And without knowing what your limit is, you like this is why I think a lot of and like speaking from experience is like a lot of clients they're uncomfortable with pushing themselves, so it takes them instead of a couple sessions, it's weeks, if not months, before they truly tap into their potential because they're not familiar and they just don't know.
Yeah.
They're still making progress. It's just slow, where most people are not comfortable with
I think
real.
a lot of those people still end up making a lot of mental progress in the realm of, wow, I didn't know I could lift that much weight, that sort of thing,
Which is
which
huge.
is, yeah, that's fantastic because that alone is super self-motivating because they'll see that and they'll see what they're capable of, blow themselves away, and then you really have the conversation of like, that's still not even close to your max.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, great, let's keep going. Let's see what you can really do.
One of my favorites is when people do take videos because I can be like, you're like, yo, your rate of speed didn't change. You taped two out of your three sets in from rep one to rep whatever, right? Stay the same. Like we need to see this slowing down. Like you see your RPE, your RIR, whatever it is, like you're supposed to be two from fail. You, right? And this is where it's like, okay, take that last set, go to absolute failure, see how far off you were. Great. Okay. You
That's the hack
exceeded
I do.
what your reps were by, 10 reps.
Yeah.
Cool. We get to put on an additional like 40 to 50 pounds. That's
Yeah.
your working weight.
I see that a lot I see it a lot with new clients that come in.
Mhm.
Usually because it's like I do a percentage base and then I'll throw in those failure sets at the beginning where it's like, cool, we're doing sets of 6 or we're doing sets of 7, and then you're one or two sets at that rep. And then the last one's like, just go to failure and just see what it is. And I see it all the time where it's like 7, 7, 13. And I'm like,
Level up.
yeah, which is
It's
great because I program it percentage wise. So when they then log 13, the next week is just automatically bumped up based off of that. So it holds them right to where they need to be pretty quickly.
it's good. Yeah, that's something I know, like admittedly is like in my programming, that's something or just in feedback, I know I need to, figure out who wants to chase, like who's serious, like have a conversation, like how serious are you? If you're serious, like we need to do these tests. We need to do them, according to the program so frequently to make sure that you're actually on top of it. So it's just like it's a cool thing and it's a good reminder even for myself to just, who
Yeah.
wants because like there's always clients that just like they're happy to move. They're happy with where they're at. Having structure is helpful, having someone to hold them accountable. It's great. But if they, complain down the line, it's like, okay, we got some certain things we need to do. And then there's the other
Yeah.
people that are progressing. I don't, you see my video of Brady who's got a bum knee. I want to get him on here, but we can't even call it a bum knee anymore. But that was one of those discussions that he's a great example of the person who's like, okay, what do I need to do? And I'm like, you need to try harder. Not that he
Yeah.
wasn't before, but it was just like we need to be intentional. And all of a sudden, 390 for three reps on deads. They were not fast. They were not fast.
Yeah. But doesn't matter because it was 390 with deadlifts when you had a bum knee.
It's cool.
That's the
Cool,
other thing
cool.
too. I don't remember if I wrote that down here.
Like
Um,
injuries.
Lifting heavy is the primary stimulus for rebuilding tendons, for stiffening tendons and strengthening them.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen with lightweight at all.
One of the
So people want to try to go like lightweight because something's sprained or they're coming back from an injury or anything like that. And it's like, cool, I get being cautious at first, of course, to test it out, make sure that you're good. But as quickly as possible, you should be bumping up that weight and intensity.
yes.
The entire time you're going, obviously, keep your focus on it, make sure that you're not going to hurt yourself or re-injure anything. But as soon as you can safely, like you need to be down low in the rep range, loading up heavy on that joint so that the tendon can actually rebuild and
Yeah.
actually get stronger because it's the only way it's going to respond.
Was it you think of like the saying that I always use is like tendons like tension. So, right, you have your muscle belly, which is red and full of blood and fluid, and then on either end connects, right? So say this is muscle and these are your tendons connecting to your bone or different,
It's pretty
parts of the
solid
joint.
visual, actually.
It is. And when you flex it, it gets bigger. But where they attach, right, the tendons are more white or opaque, meaning that they don't actually get a lot of blood flow. So if we're not stressing them, they will heal, but giving more
Maybe.
blood flow and having them work helps. And right, like yes, this is where it can be a little out of our scope hypothetically is like go talk to a physical therapist, right? There's different things that can happen, but for the most part is like if you're PT, if you don't have some like traumatic injury, this is what I found. Again, I know I'm not a PT, but the the movement forward PTs are going to see more progress in their clientele than the ones that go, oh, just rest it. Don't use it. It's
Yeah,
like
that makes it
absolutely
worse.
makes it worse. I have numerous clients where I'm like, hey, here's my suggestion. Here's a PT I'd like to connect you with because they want you to do these things and they see far more progress. They're more confident in their body and movement and strength over time compared to the ones that got fear-mongered and told to rest. So now anytime an injury comes up, it means that you're broken. It's like, I know I'm getting into the weeds a little bit, but it's just like
Yeah,
these things matter. And strength training, right? Your tendons, your bones, your muscles, your mind, your health, like all these things become stronger when you truly resistance train like you mean it.
yeah. I got a guy, my latest client, no, second to latest client. He came in with a bum shoulder from just some surgery work he got done, and it just never really stopped hurting. So we went to work. He's tried the PT thing and just never really got it 100%. Now most days it went from hurting every day to now most days being pain free, and occasionally still kind of there a little bit, but it's still getting better over time. And so now he's not mad that the shoulders hurt. Now he's mad that the shoulder's weaker than the other one.
Fair.
So now that we got it to a mostly pain-free state, we can now start pushing it to get it to catch up to the other shoulder.
Mhm.
And all we did is just loaded it heavy.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
we did it safely. We used machines. We didn't really use barbells. We didn't really use cables. We did machines and some light dumbbell like lateral raises and stuff like that. And just,
work your way up.
yeah, the machines were heavy. It was like a machine shoulder press. It was some machine rows to work on the rear part of the shoulder. Same thing. Sets of four, sets of six.
One thing too is just like keep in mind too is like if you are listening to this, watching this, and you're dealing with something, it's like yes, generally there should be a regression in weight and reps and range of motion, and then it's once that initial acute injury inflammation is gone, work up accordingly, right? We're talking about meeting someone where they're at. We're not saying, oh, you got a messed up shoulder, like load up, like
Yeah, don't force the weak shoulder to keep up with the strong
it's
shoulder. Like,
issue adaptation. It's
yeah,
you need to like anything, right? It grows over time. You don't try to like take it to the limit right away.
yeah. Meet the weak shoulder wherever it is, and then just slowly pull it along.
All right, all right, all right. Let's okay, so we've talked about it without talking about it, but one of the things that we want to do is we want to be able to track the progress that we're making, right? We actually just kind of brought it up right there, but like tracking overload over time, right? That was our last episode was progressive overload.
Still
So
matters.
just gonna have to check that one out.
Yeah.
Again, the big takeaway is like ensuring that you're increasing weight and or adding stimulating reps over time. So again, like we were saying, is like being within a few reps of failure and not accumulating too much fatigue via junk volume. Again, this is that reference of like if we're going for 12 to 15 reps, and you're fatigued from you fatigued from rep one to rep eight, and then your last couple, you really can't put it down like you could if you were only
Yeah.
doing 4 to 8 reps. It would be completely different and it would look different. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Because here's the thing: when you do those longer sets, those higher volume sets, and you feel the burn and you're starting to breathe heavier, those sensations, your body makes up for it by turning down muscle motor unit recruitment. So when you're experiencing those, you're also making it less likely that you're going to hit those larger motor units. So that's why you have to push even harder to try to overcome those, because you're also dealing with all these other points of feedback that make the set seem harder than it actually is, because you're dealing with a lot more, because you're breathing hard, or you've got the burn in the biceps because it's rep 22 and you got to get to 30. Like, sure, fine, they're cool to feel, I guess. I don't know. It's not really my jam. I just like getting in, doing the work, getting out, being strong, not being sore the next day, showing up at a wrestling show and just doing my thing. That's where I like putting it down. But that's just me. Some people like being sore 4, 5, 6 days after they work out, and for them, this is not the work. This is not the episode for them, quite frankly. This is for the people that don't want to be sore after a workout. This is for the people, or not as sore, because you'll still be a little bit, but you're not going to be sore for days after.
Yeah, you're accomplishing recoverable effective volume. So, and again, soreness, like in most cases, is an inflammation response. So a little bit is needed. We want it, it's normal, but too much means that you accumulated garbage and wasted your time.
Yeah.
So the big thing is like we were just talking about it too with some of those examples is like we want you within a couple reps of failure at each set. That is the goal without accumulating a bunch of crap volume. So if you like we were saying is like Tony was mentioning, he's like, oh, if someone, they're only supposed to get 7 reps, but they got 13, then we need to up the load. The load has to go up so that by the time you achieve 7 reps, you are truly only going to you could only get 9 reps, and that ninth is going to be a gnarly one. Like
Yeah.
that is the goal. It's going to be slow. It's going to be a little wavery. You're going to be making faces. Like that's what you want. So
You're gonna spend the whole time in the rep thinking about whether or not you can actually finish it. Like it's gonna take you like 5, 6 seconds to get that last rep. And that's the actual like zero RIR rep is like super slow, super grindy. The whole time you're doing it, you're not sure you're gonna do it.
yes,
And and then you get it and everything's locked out. You're like, oh, finally done. Drop this thing.
I was just smiling because in my head I'm like, it's you want to get to the point that, whatever your RIR RPE is, when you're like 1 or 2 reps before like you're truly gonna call it, in my head, I know I'm in the right place when I'm like based on that rep, and this is like while I'm moving, I'm like, based on that rep, like I still have to do 2 more. And then you get to that next one, and you're like, oh my God. And then you get to the last one, you're like, you have to get to that point.
Yeah, if you're
I'm
not
not
if you're
asking
not
you to be dangerous, but it's like you have to get
yeah,
you
if you're not questioning any rep of whether or not you can do it, it like bump it up. That's an easy sign that you can go heavier.
like, and again, just because it's fresh, because today I hit 475. Um, so I got halfway through the rep and I was like, oh God, like don't stop. And there's the
Yeah.
thought in my head, I'm like, I think I stopped. I'm standing now. Oh, I think I may have just blacked out, and then you watch the video and you're like, shit, it looks like there's more in the tank. Like it was slow. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Those are the types of conversations you want to have in your head. This is why I like doing everything with machines because it allows you to comfortably and safely push super hard. Because if you get to a point where maybe you overshoot your ability and you end up stuck halfway in the rep, you just let the handle back down and you're fine. You don't have to worry about getting pinned under a barbell or anything like that, like with a bench or a squat.
Yeah. Well, and right, usually you can still, right, like barbells, it's a different skill, right? It takes maybe a little bit more time compared to a machine, which is more isolation, right? Nine
Mm-hmm.
times out of 10, it's isolating specific muscle groups, more
Yeah,
so.
it's super high
Uh,
stability versus a barbell,
yeah.
which is like there's that skill and the coordination demand that you have to learn
Yeah.
over time too.
Yep. It's like, take like a strict press, for example. Your lower body has to be locked in, your breath, your bracing, everything, all just to work your shoulders and your shoulders, your chest, right? There's a lot more there, but
Hmm.
just to do a press, you have to ensure the rest of your body's in place. And then do you know how to fail? What if the bar goes backwards over your head?
Yeah,
What if the bar comes out of your hands? Is it falling on your dome or is it going to fall in front? Like, how are you going to fail? You can set the safeties appropriately 100%, but the risk is still high because the safeties at their lowest point would have to be just below your shoulders, which means this is all still room for error where the bar can
yeah,
hit, compared to a shoulder press where you're totally in the clear, right? You're here, you're banging it out, and then if you fail here, ka-chunk, I'm okay. Loud noise, but everything's okay.
yeah. So that's generally why I shift more when it comes to coaching more towards and really more for myself too these days. It's more machines and all that stuff. It's generally it lets me push harder in the movement because I'm not worried about is my core locked in properly? Where's the weight in my heels for this overhead press or for this squat? Or, where are my hips going for this squat? Are they rising before my knees or before my shoulders, or like all these other conversations that you have if you're doing if you're doing the big four, right? So you just remove all those, and then it's just like, just push the weight, push the weight, just go, pull
You're
it.
just saying that in my head. I'm like, push presses, push jerks. These are things that I'm not like super familiar with, and then doing them maximally. I was talking Ellen has a CrossFit background and so she's familiar with all of them, but I'm just like I know I can do more, but I don't have this skill. Like
Yeah,
I can push press 235. Cool. But I'm like if I could do this cleaner, I think like 255 is probably there, but like I'm good right now. I don't have this skill. And that's like takes a lot for me to not push it, but I also believe I'm getting wiser as I get older.
yeah,
Uh, but it's like these are still maximal lifts, but it's just like there's that thought in my head again as being like a more advanced lifter, but not in this specific movement. Um, but interesting observation that I've had while I've been doing some movements that I'm not super well versed at.
yeah. There's a huge skill component, and that's another part of that initial newbie gains for like a powerlifting program or for a CrossFit style program or an Olympic lifting program, where you're just learning the skill. And so as you learn the skill, you'll be able to just throw around more weight just from that without actually building any more muscle, because you know how to handle the weight, which is great because that's absolutely a part of it. But when you learn the weight, when you learn the movement, that weight progression will then slow down because now you start to learn it neurally, and then you have to start building muscle to support more weight. And that's usually when people switch to something else. They switch exercise order, they switch the programming, they go to a different type of lifting altogether, and then wonder why they're stuck 3 years later. It's like
Only
because
they
you didn't really stick with anything long enough to actually build anything in the body
can.
other than just skills, which is great. Like it's cool, but that's not what you're after. What you're after was something else, and you didn't stick around with anything long enough to get there.
And unfortunately, most people don't know better. Like they
Yeah,
don't know
that's
what to
that's
do.
really what it is. It's like it's not that anybody's doing anything wrong; they just don't know, right?
But
Like
the
people
program
are
is
still,
shit.
yeah, we're still trained to look for the burn. We're still trained to leave the gym in a ball of sweat. We're still trained to be sore for 5 days after, or it wasn't worth it. And the sad truth is those are all wrong.
Mm.
It's not even like those are right in these cases. Like they're just wrong.
And you don't get believers in the short term necessarily. Like someone has to usually trust a trainer or a program and apply themselves appropriately for 2, 3 months consistently. And then when they start seeing results, they start seeing results.
Yeah, Jack. I'm gonna toot my own horn here for a little bit because I've been talking about I've been talking about the low rep stuff for months, right?
Yeah,
And I've been reading about it for months before that, before I even brought it up to you or anybody else around me. Because when I first came across it, I'm like, that doesn't seem right. But I was
I
like,
gotta study up.
I'll study and I'll give it a shot and I'll see what happens. And even now, there's still people that are like, you're not doing enough volume, dude. It's holding you back. There's my buddy at work, right? That's been trying to get me to do a high volume thing with him for months. Who has now stopped all barbell movements because all of his injuries are finally catching up to him. Weird. Um,
He clearly doesn't watch the show. Continue.
he clearly doesn't watch the show. But it's like you said, where people need to see it happen before they'll really believe it because it takes so much longer to actually see results. So guess the most common types of conversations I've had in the past few days since those pictures came out of me from the last Albuquerque show.
Well, I already know because I got the inside scoop on some things, but like what are you doing? What's your cycle? Are you taking TRT?
Yeah, it's that. It's what are you doing? It's help me get those abs. It's like I was at wrestling training yesterday, and everybody was like, "Holy shit, dude! Like you inspired all of us to get our shit together too, because like you're the oldest one here and you're in the best shape." And I'm like,
Pay me.
I
Take
mean, it's
pictures to
just
last longer.
like it's real. It's. But when I lay it out, then people won't believe it, and I know that because I have laid it out. People are like, it can't be that simple. It can't just be calories, protein, 3 workouts a week, and 10,000 steps a day. Can't be. I can't be it. And I'm
Be
like,
reaping well, and they're probably not familiar with the regimen that it's going to take to achieve those kind of goals, and they don't want it bad enough to actually follow through.
well, no, it's because we're socially thought, we're conditioned to think that it takes 2 days, 7 days a week, and it takes bland food 6 times a day, and it takes, unseasoned tilapia and rice and broccoli, or if you're feeling real froggy, chicken thighs and broccoli. If you're feeling real spicy, like you
It kind
can't
of
do
sounds
that. You can't pull off what I've pulled off by going to McDonald's 4 or 5 days a week and getting a double cheeseburger because you just have the calories at the end of the day. You can't do that.
Mhm.
You can't go to Raising Cane's over the weekend if you just keep your calories and protein in check. It doesn't work. It doesn't work if you just go to the gym 3 times a week, all full body, and you just focus on intensity and getting close to failure. It doesn't work. It doesn't work by using 10,000 steps a day just to standardize your movement every single day of the week. It doesn't work.
Doesn't work. If you're over 35, it doesn't work. Promise.
If you're over 35, your metabolism is going to catch up with you and you're not going to be able to lose fat effectively.
Well,
You're
science
definitely
says
not you're definitely where are we now? March, October, November, December, January, February. You're definitely not going to drop 25 pounds in 6 months if you just stick to the plan every single day.
and humans are not as complex as I think
Really not. We're not
mainstream
that.
fitness makes them out. Like, oh, you're unique because of this. It's like,
No.
no,
Your blood type has no bearing on how effectively you're going to build fat, build muscle or lose fat. Your blood
just
type doesn't
quit.
matter.
Are you an endomorph or an ec? No, you're just either
No.
overweight or you're not.
Yeah.
Like people, it's so interesting how we need to do like another debunking episode, but like
Let's do it next week. Let's do all debunkings next Thursday.
we're
We'll
gonna
find
have to
like
like,
3 or 4 things over the weekend, and we'll just like the body type thing is definitely going to be one. The ectomorph, endomorph, mesomorph.
what is it? I'm gonna pull some dirt on V Shred, whatever his nuts is.
We'll talk about I saw a thing yesterday that was talking about how bad a hamburger bun is because it had 30 ingredients in it. Didn't say what ingredients were bad, but just the fact that it had 30 ingredients, it was bad.
Do we want to break down what's in like the composition of beef or chicken?
My go-to is always the banana because I remember that one clearly where like you break it down and you just use the scientific chemical names for everything that's in a banana and it's like 20 lines long of all these different ingredients. Yeah.
Quality matters, right?
Eh,
To
eh,
an right, we want to make sure we're getting
eh.
specific nutrients. We want to make sure you can't fight that. Don't me on that one. Like there
Yeah,
is
but once
a
yeah, but
certain
once you
point.
hit that,
Yeah,
you're
yes,
fine.
yes, yes, 100%. Then it comes down to what are my calories? Am I getting enough protein? Am I
Yeah,
giving
here's
the body
this
reason
this
to
is
adapt?
this is why I go because on a day like today, meaning a day I didn't lift, I had a protein shake that I had one of those premier ready to drink protein shakes,
Yeah.
and it's loaded to the rim with vitamins and minerals. So it covers that. So what do I need food quality for after that? Like
Yeah,
I get the idea of like you need it for micronutrients, right? For all the vitamins, all the minerals.
yeah.
Cool. I just had this protein shake that had it all. Because they are important, sure. Like I like nobody's most
Nobody.
people aren't dumb enough to argue that point. They're important. But
Mhm.
if I have it in a protein shake or you have a green supplement that has it all, cool, now what?
Right. Hit your calories. Hit
And it's just
whatever
hit your calories,
macro.
hit your protein. Then what's the
Yeah.
issue? There's that college professor that lost 30 pounds on a Twinkie diet. He did
Mhm.
Twinkies, protein shakes, and vitamin supplements. He
Yeah.
covered his bases.
And there's another guy that did that on McDonald's too.
Yeah. I think it's still on YouTube. It's called Downsize Me. It's a 5 part series
Oh.
before you could do longer than 10-minute videos on YouTube. And so it was like all he did was he just tracked his calories and he just calculated it all out, lost weight, built muscle, all of his blood markers got better, every single one, and it was McDonald's 3 times a day.
Mhm. There was and this is I just shared this with you too. If Andy Gallopin, who we've both seen live once or twice now, or saw him speak in person, but he just did I haven't finished the episode yet, but a guy named Jordy Sullivan who works with um, MMA athletes, and like guy like the top, he at one point he had like the top, he had three of like the top five in the world, and the episode starts just like listing off these foods, and you're like, wow, that sounds like the most amazing, like treats and just like these heavy food, like cereal. And he was like, oh, that was for me before I competed in something. He's an ultra marathon runner
Yeah.
too.
Bro, we get done with this. I'm going downstairs and having a bowl of cinnamon toast crunch with 4 eggs and a cup of Greek yogurt.
Yes. So all I'm getting is like, there's many ways to do it, and it doesn't have to be the fucking gross unseasoned tilapia, the boiled
Ah,
chicken, the right, like,
really doesn't.
no.
Take a green supplement, take some fish oil capsules, you're
Get some
done.
sunlight, eat the calories you need.
And then after that, just get the protein and calories. Just like it's super simple. It's really like have the bread, have the white potato,
Mhm.
enjoy the fries. Donut's great, but you
Mhm.
just got to keep track of the calories. Like that's the caveat. Like
And exercise.
yeah, like I had a conversation with somebody. I was like, these are as a result of those pictures. And I gave somebody like an estimate of what I thought they should be at calorie and protein wise, because they're the only two numbers I prescribe now, just calories and protein.
Yeah.
Um, and he was like, bro, that's what I'm doing right now. And I was like, cool, send me your food logs. Oh, well, I just do mental tracking. And I was like,
Okay.
okay, well,
You just answered all the questions.
yeah. Well, now we know what the issue is. So yeah.
Yes. All right, let's rein it back in a little bit.
Let's get back on
Uh,
track because we went super off the rails.
okay, so like
I think I still
common.
stayed pretty nice though. I stayed pretty nice, which is
Yeah, it's
nicer than I thought I was going to be given this topic.
I think people get the point. Like hopefully,
They
uh,
do. I don't
we'll
think they
know
do
we'll
because
know if they speak on their application and their success.
I'm still going to have the conversations of like I can't believe you have pizza. It's
Dude, when I was at my most lean, I was eating large toppers pizza and a large order of like the cheesy breadsticks or whatever, like
yeah.
weekly, and donuts. I would have like
Yeah.
six of these donuts per like.
Dude, I'm not like I mentioned going to McDonald's 4 times a week earlier. Like that's not an
uh,
exaggeration. That's not a
uh,
joke.
I didn't
Like
realize the deals you could get through their app. That's what blew
yeah,
my mind when you sent that to me. I was like, wow,
you go on the app, you get 30% off a double cheeseburger. Like, bro, like I do that, but it's 440 calories. So when
you
you're
could just be irresponsible and be fat and use that too, but you're not.
yeah, but when you have a certain calorie number that you just fit it in and make it work. Like it's fine.
Mhm.
It's I promise it's not that hard. But we want it to be hard because when it's hard, we can then blame that for our failure. It's all it comes down to. Oh, it didn't work. Well, it's because of the diet. It's because of the cheeseburger, because it's not healthy. It's not because I was terrible at tracking it and keeping track of how many of them I ate.
Mhm. Could
Couldn't be that. Couldn't be because I had the whole box of Krispy Kreme instead of just one or two. Couldn't be because I
or
got the large fries instead of the medium. Couldn't be because I got a third refill of Coke.
mhm. I ate half the box of crumble cookie.
Yeah. Couldn't be any of those.
All right, let's.
Anyway,
So real quick,
anyway,
we got a
we
couple
were
hit
trying to
points.
get back on track, Jack, and you pulled us back off, or maybe I did. I don't know.
I don't know. It doesn't matter now. Okay, so couple hit points as far as like takeaways, mistakes to avoid. We already talked about this, right? But for hypertrophy, building muscle, increasing muscle size, um, we're looking at more of that like 4 to 8 rep range. So we're avoiding the unnecessary fatigue and also being like 0 to 2 reps from failure. Just because like we know that force production is going to be at its highest and we're being really effective while avoiding fatigue.
Yeah. And really that goes the same for both compound and isolation exercises. So a lot of people like to say that, the smaller muscle groups work better with higher reps. So they'll use that for like shoulders or biceps or triceps. Doesn't it all applies, it all works the same. So shoulders, if you're doing a shoulder press machine or a lateral raise, you can do it. It works just as effectively with low reps. The issue is people like to be able to do like a lateral raise or something like that. And that is notably significantly harder to do if you're trying to load it heavy enough that you're doing a true 5 rep max. It's really hard. But if you go do a shoulder press machine, or you get one of these fancy like shoulder these side lateral machines, yeah, you load that up with a 5 rep max, you're good to go. Or you do a cable lateral raise for 5 reps. You do preacher curls for 5 reps for the biceps. You can do a tricep extension for 5 reps, for 6 reps, whatever. It works just the same.
Mhm.
It works just the same. It's not any, it's their muscles just like the quads, just like the pecs, just like the lats. They respond the same way. They respond to the same tension. They respond to the same mechanical tension. Same across the board.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, so one of the other things we talked about was stopping sets too early, right? That was the idea of thinking that you're getting to the point that it's tough when this was that example where I said, like, we're bringing someone in and they're like, oh, this is the weight I use. And then the speed didn't change at all. Their face, their effort really didn't change from rep one to say rep 10, where we would be like, here you go, here's 20 more pounds. And then they start like, oh my God, this is harder, but they're moving it. And then by the
Mhm.
time they get to the end of whatever the prescribed rep range is, we see things slow down again, involuntary, not intentionally, not on purpose, because they
Yeah.
are becoming more fatigued, like truly becoming fatigued. Um,
Yeah.
so
You want to try to move the weight as fast as possible, but you just can't because the load is too heavy and your muscles are getting cooked.
yes,
That's what you're looking for.
yep. So again, not it's getting the effective reps. That is the goal without getting too many to get fatigued. So again, similar to the point that we made just prior.
Yeah. And if the weight's heavy, it's kind of impossible to get too many because you will just fail before you get there.
Um, Talk about this, it's like chasing the pump, right? You generally it's like higher reps. I would say at minimum 3 sets. When I say higher reps, we're talking like 10, 12 plus.
Basically double digit,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yep. It's just it's like the just because you feel the muscle working doesn't mean it's growing. That's the whole idea of the pump too. It's like if we're using a muscle, blood is going there. And then people think you just got to, like do more and more reps. But like we kind of discussed is you start getting over like the 12, 15 rep range. It's like you're literally training for endurance. You're, like maybe over time the muscle, like over a longer period of time, the muscle will grow, but
Not at a rate you'd be happy with.
no, and it's just not effective.
Yeah.
So why are we wasting our time?
And I'm still going to position that if you are going low rep and you do it properly, you're still getting a pump. But I
Mhm.
will say that it's probably not going to be as big of a pump. So there is that. But in my experience, and I don't know if this is true for anybody else, it does last longer too. So there is that.
I'm
It
pay
doesn't fade
attention
in
to
like 20 minutes, but try it. Let me know, Jack. Try it. Let me know what you think. Anybody else listening, try it. Let me know what you notice too.
that. Can
Because I
do.
want to, because I'm super curious about that. Because the thing is, there's no studies on this because this is not something that's tested.
Mhm.
Even when I go look at hypertrophy studies now, I go and I look at the method section and I'm like, well, how did they do this? And it's like sets of 12. And I'm like, okay, well, it's like 4 sets of 12. And I'm like, all right, well, we're not looking at muscle growth studies. We're looking at just a muscle swelling study because that's all we're measuring at that point.
Mhm. Okay, so the last thing that we kind of looked at was not tracking progress.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't increase weight over time, you're not going to see gains. Again, this comes down to the basic principle of like we have to give our body something to adapt to.
Yeah.
And
If
you're
you
either
and
adapting towards endurance or you're adapting towards growth and increases in strength.
yeah. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here and make this call strictly on my own experience, which is, and I think I might have actually talked about this on either the last episode or a couple episodes because this doesn't seem like a new thing I'm saying. But unless you are specifically trying to get better at like marathon running or like tactical or something that's purely endurance sport based, if you just focus on building muscle, your endurance is going to get better too.
Mhm.
And I'm basing that off of the fact that my cardio has gotten better in wrestling. And I don't do the stairs, I don't run, I don't do sprints, I don't do any of that. I do my 10K steps, but it's all walking. And depending on how busy I am at work, it's all broken up throughout the course of the day. So it's not one solid 10,000 step block. It's just over the course of the day. So usually what will happen is I'll just go to the gym after work and just get whatever steps I need to get to 10,000 for the day. So I could end up going to get 8,000 steps. It could be like today where I just go to the gym and get 2,000 because I got 8,000 at work. Depends. It could be where I end up not going to the gym at all because I got 12,000 at work. That's happened too.
Mhm.
But I've noticed that my cardio has gotten better training this way. But again, that's super anecdotal. So right, that's like bottom of the evidence hierarchy. So like it's not there's not even any research or studies on it to confirm or deny because it's just not something that's got anybody's attention. But that's just something I noticed. So
Well, and another, like, again, another personal example is, all right, so I played soccer on a traveling team until I was 20, 19 or 20. So from like 7 to 20 high level soccer. So I did that, but I also lifted during the whole time. And then when I got to college, right, there were several years where it's just like didn't do cardio. It was just lifting, mostly powerlifting, honestly. Um, and I remember in my first or my second, I think it was my second year in college, I joined a VO2 max study. It was something I had to do for school. And they tested VO2 max, and I was testing just under a senior D1 wrestler. And everyone was like, why, like, what else do you do? Did you lie in your intake? And it was like, no, just I've been really consistent with lifting. And then, over the course of the
actually,
study,
I do have a second case study, but keep going.
no, but it was just they asked that multiple times. They're like, "What do you do?" This is like this like the results that you're getting over the course of this is like that of a cyclist, like someone who's up there. I'm like, I ride my old ass Schwinn to class, but that's collectively like a mile per day.
Yeah,
Doesn't count for much, and that's like a leisurely because this thing's a rust bucket.
yeah,
So it's another testament to, it's like building muscle, building strength, doing that long term. It does translate. And another thing too is I jumped into a half marathon having collectively run 6 miles in total over the course of two runs, and then did a half marathon in 2 hours, untrained.
yeah,
Did not stop.
yeah,
That's not a bad time if you know half marathon times. But that was again me not being a runner. This was numerous years prior to the 50K and the half marathon we've done in the last few years.
yeah. Because in my head, the way it plays out is when you have more muscle, you can store more energy. So you can store more creatine, you can store more glycogen. When you can store more energy, you don't necessarily need to pull from outside. So you're not really taxing the cardiovascular system to move energy around to supply the muscle. So then you just have to worry about the other side of like getting rid of all the energy byproducts, right? Which when you're doing like a marathon, once you just find your balance point, you're set, right? But the second case study that popped into my head was um, my best friend was just doing PT. He was doing PT for some CV stuff he had happened last year, where basically like he's on oxygen right now. And he hit me up one day and he was talking about how when he would stand up, he would just get busier. When he would turn his head too fast, he would get dizzy. And I was like, well, that makes sense, right? Because basically his lung function is compromised right now. Um, and I was like, I used to deal with that too, because I did years ago in like 2019, 2020, I was dealing with that. And what worked for me was just focusing more on building muscle. So I actually turned down because this is when I was still powerlifting and competing in powerlifting. So my intensity was through the roof. So my volume was not very high. So I wasn't getting enough of these stimulating reps. And then I turned it down a little and I got more reps and it got better in like a few weeks. And so he wasn't doing anything very active. All he was doing was just the physical therapy. And I was like, dude, I think you just got to build some muscle. And I laid out the same theory to him that I just laid out a couple minutes ago of like building muscle just gets you to have more on hand energy. So you don't depend on your body being able to move blood and oxygen around as much. And like 2 weeks in, he's like, I can do it all now. Like he's still on oxygen, but he can stand up without getting dizzy. He can turn his head without getting dizzy. And he was talking about like turning his head for driving. Like you pull up to an intersection, you got to go one way, you got to go the other way. That would make him dizzy. He's fine now. Like not even a trace. He can stand up, fine. And all he did was he trained exactly like this. 2 weeks gone. So like realistically, not even really enough time to actually build any muscle, but like just teaching the body how to handle energy.
Mhm. It's cool. So you should strength train. We're ending it like we started it. You should strength train because it makes everything better.
It makes everything better. Like he's the one guy in the gym right now. He's walking around the gym with a portable oxygen tank.
Good for
And
him.
like he'll do leg press, he'll do shoulder press machines, he'll do chest press, whatever. It's fine. It's getting better. It's getting easier for him every week. He goes back and tests it again the next time. So
You ever get a bump off him?
no, but I have thought about it. I'm like, bro, let me go power lift real quick. Let me hit your tank.
It's just where my
Be
mind goes right away, dude.
be like the second best thing I've ever done, right behind smelling salts.
It's good.
So key takeaway above all is just lift weights because it does make everything better. So I
Yeah.
don't know what to tell you. I've
I,
yet to
uh,
find something that building muscle isn't at least part of the solution.
yeah.
I really haven't.
I don't have anything either. So
Like
I,
if anybody knows of something, like please. I mean, the only downside is you'll have to buy new clothes.
or
Damn.
walk through doors
The
sideways.
the only downside is you might have to spend more money on food because you might be hungry a little more often. That could kind of suck actually. But like I don't know, like the body doesn't there's no part of the body that gets worse with more muscle. There's really like this is obviously outside of like professional bodybuilders that are using like grams and grams of steroids because that's a different conversation altogether.
It's also heart and intestinal, and
Correct.
there's a lot there. Anyway,
Yeah.
for the naturals,
For the naturals, like there's not I can't think of anything that is worsened by having more muscle.
agreed. All right,
Bones
track.
get stronger, organs work better, your immune system works better, so you get sick less often,
You're more protected. You get in
you're
a
more
car crash, your
protected.
body's more resilient.
Yeah. You heal faster because your body is used to building and strengthening tissue. When you do get sick, you get better faster.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't know.
Yes.
People are like, what's the magic pill for everything? It might be muscle. It might
I
like I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure. I can't say for sure, but I think muscle might be a pretty good part of that puzzle.
and a quick example, just because it's fresh. There was a woman locally to us whose son had who he had cancer, but prior to that, he was a football player and he was a lifter and he was really good with his nutrition and had like a really, like the kid was probably like 175, 185 pounds for being like a sophomore or a junior at the time, which is like it's a good build. And the cancer was like super aggressive. And after the fact, they were like, it was like if he didn't have this much muscle, we don't actually think that he would have made it because of how much muscle wasting there was. Had
Yeah.
he had less and had, lesser health from the beginning, it could have been a completely different story.
Yeah.
but they were like, he's so much more resilient. And like, yeah, he lost 50 pounds, but what if he already started at 50 pounds less than
Yeah.
that?
What if he'd started 50 pounds down already, then
Right.
go where? Yeah. Just
So
saying. Muscle might
interesting.
be muscle might be the magic pill everybody wants to, well, everybody wants.
Yes. Alrighty, alrighty, alrighty. Yeah, it's if you know we've said it many different ways, but it's like if you don't feel like your workouts are working, you have to look at the quality of your reps and making sure that your rep range isn't ludicrous and make sure that it's in the realm of recoverable and enough that you can put it down in those reps, recover, do it for again, we were kind of talking things like that. You can in 1 to 3 sets, you can do some serious work without stretching yourself too thin.
Yeah, I guess if you walk in the gym on a Monday, because this is usually a Monday workout for a lot of people, and your Monday workout is flat chest press, incline chest press, decline chest press, cable flies. I don't even need to ask you your rep ranges or sets or anything. I can just tell you right away you're doing too much, which means you're not pushing anything hard enough. Because if you were pushing your flat bench hard enough, you wouldn't have enough gas to effectively do incline and all the way down the list.
Ouch.
So you're either not pushing effectively in the first three exercises and you're saving it for cable flies at the end, which means why are you doing the first three at all? Or you're just not pushing anywhere because that's what's enabling you to get through that workout. Or you are pushing and you're giving everything you got at the flat incline, which means now your incline, decline, and cable flies are kind of useless because you're not push. You don't have anything. You don't have enough left in the tank to really push those effectively. So why are you doing those? You're wasting your time with those too.
Quality.
Uh huh. Uh huh. Here I will argue quality. Food,
We'll have another call on that.
eh. Yeah. We'll have another call on that. But I
You
mean,
know,
just go back 20 minutes. You basically summed it up. It's like just make sure you get, however you can, just get your vitamins. Like you can get them from food, sure, you can. You should get them from a
supplementation.
supplement too. Like that's fine.
It's finding what works. What's
If
what's
yeah,
what
if you're
works for you, what makes you happy, what makes you feel good, and allows for you to get results. That's
yeah,
what it's down
if
to.
if you're like me and you just hate vegetables, like
See, and then like that's the flip side. Is like for me, is like I will take the time to prioritize vegetables because I'm weird and enjoy it, so I'm gonna do it.
yeah,
Like fine,
like I hate the way they taste. I don't feel any different with or without them. I feel exactly the same on either side. So I'm like,
do it, do it.
yeah.
As long as yeah, yeah, you're
But that's
good.
a case by case basis. Like I'm not going to tell everybody no vegetables.
Right.
But if I come across somebody and they're like, man, I just hate vegetables and they hate them like as much as me, I'm gonna be like, don't.
You want to be friends? Can we just become
Yeah.
best friends?
Like, do we just become best friends and then just like don't
Oh,
just have a vitamin supplement. Just find a good one. I'll point you in the direction. Have those, cover those bases. Done. Don't stress about them.
mhm. This one's kind of tied into, it's like having more muscle makes everything better. Once you start training more effectively in your rep ranges, everything changes. You start to see results faster. You're going to be more adherent to your programming. You're going to be more in tune to the quality of your reps. It just like it helps a lot. So when you start actually achieving the goal that you're saying that you want to, it's like that's when people become addicted or fanatical about fitness, right? Tony and I wouldn't be in the position
Yeah.
we're in if we didn't somewhere down the line see success. Why would we keep going if we didn't, right? Unless we're just like really hard-headed, which is possible. But at some point, we did enough of something and saw results and then decided to continue pursuing it because we continued to see results. And now we're here sharing it with you, helping you figure out whatever it is that you're trying to figure out so you can progress.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. It's funny. Two of the guys in my program are like, man, I've never really trained legs before. And I laugh because it's like that's the
Wow.
trope, right? Is like guys don't train legs, women don't train upper body. And so, but now they're like, now I see that it's getting stronger. And like that's all they want to do now is just like hit legs every day. And I'm like, you don't want to hit legs every day because you won't recover, But luckily, since we do full body, you do hit them every time you go to the gym. So there is that.
Right. Yeah.
Do hit
Concentrate
legs three
maybe on
times a
something a
week.
little different one time than the next.
Yeah. One workout's a little more quad heavy, and others a little more hamstring heavy, and others more glute heavy.
Yep. Yep.
But now that they've seen some results, now they're all about it.
Yeah. When you're hooked and you see results and you feel good and you enjoy it, like
Hmm.
you're done.
Which
You're cooked.
which
That's
yeah,
you're a
which
lifer.
then it starts to amplify everything. Then you start enjoying it because you're seeing results, so you push harder, so you see even more results, so you enjoy it even more, so then you push even harder, and it just that cycle on repeat.
Yep. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think one of the things is like pay attention to how many reps, like next time you work out, listeners, is figuring out like how many of those reps do you have where you're actually pushing yourself? Like what we were talking about is like when you're starting to make funny faces, weird sounds, and you feel yourself like really engage your entire body that much more. Like those are the like how do we replicate that? That is the goal. We want to have more reps that are like that. And it might mean that you need to change your sets and rep scheme to allow that to happen. Again, this is keeping in mind with the goal of hypertrophy, increasing muscle size and strength, not for running, not for CrossFit, not for the tactical games, right? The different goals. We're just talking strictly about building the size of the muscle and increasing strength.
Yeah. But also a lot of the top CrossFit athletes in their off-season phase, they do focus on building muscle.
Yes. No, of course.
So
Yeah,
there is that too.
you can't get rid of like that whole like powerlifting side of things
So
because it's just
even
output.
them, yeah. And the Olympic athletes are the same way. They spend time building muscle. We just don't see it because we don't really pay attention to them until it gets close to the Olympic Games. And by then they've switched into in-season mode where all they're
In
doing
the water.
is just whatever it is they're there for. So if they're swimming, it's all they're doing. They're doing gymnastics, that's all they're doing.
Yep. Well, I think that about caps this one.
I think so too. Jack, if anybody's got questions, they want to talk more about rep ranges, they want to talk more about food and food quality, and they want to argue with you about 30 ingredient buns, and they want to talk to you because they know if they talk to me, I'm just not going to listen to them. Where can they reach out to you?
I'll hear him out like a little bit more, but
I
not
I
much.
mean, I'll just ask for what ingredient. Like, what's the bad ingredient? Because it's like it's whatever. Like
Yeah. Hey, Tony, you can find me on Facebook, Jack Sullivan, or on Instagram at modern __strength. Turbo Tony Davis. Where can you be found, sir?
before I tell you where you can find me, you're not getting me off this point, Jack. I know you tried, and I appreciate your effort.
You're on your horse. Bring it on.
But all I'm going to say is it's one quick point, and then I'll give you where you can find me. There's an amino acid called phenylalanine, and it's in diet soda. It's a byproduct of aspartame. So we drink aspartame, our bodies break it down. Phenylalanine is one of the things that comes as a byproduct. And so apparently it's this horrible chemical, and it's so bad that it has to be stamped on the side of the can that this product contains phenylalanine. The issue is, so right, big scary word, lots of letters, lots of syllables, must be terrible for our health. That's in red meat too.
Ah,
Not only is in red meat, it's in red meat in much bigger quantities than it is in a can of Coke Zero. That's all I'm
dumb,
going to say about your bad ingredients. That's it.
dumb.
On that note, if you want to find me and talk to me and tell me why I'm wrong about phenylalanine or any other artificial sweetener or any other 30 ingredient bun or any food quality, you want to come rant at me about it, you can find me at Tony Davis on Facebook. You can head over to Instagram. You can find me on Tony Davis Coaching there and on Threads. Or if you want to see some real cool stuff, you don't really want to talk about food quality, you want to just see me attack people's bodies with my bodies, you can go to the Duke City Championship Wrestling Instagram and YouTube page and do the same for Rocky Mountain Pro Wrestling. You can find me there, both places pretty frequently, half naked, attacking people with my body. So, on
I'm
that
in.
note, If you made it this far, we appreciate you. If you're coming back, you're watching this in chunks, we still appreciate you. If you're watching this at any point in the future, we definitely appreciate you just as much. We will be back next Thursday as usual with a new episode of Made of Metal.
Doodles.
Boom.
Bye.